story number 2 is, okay, I'm not going to lie, gang. This is really, really terrifying. Okay, this is what you would call a Frankenstein story. No kidding. I mean that in the literal sense. Victor Frankenstein, the creation of life, etc. Okay? This story comes to us from Wesley Smith, a writer for National Review. And he wrote this past week about an experiment that took place in a hospital near Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Okay, a story that originally ran on NPR. And this is from the NPR story. Quote, researchers have conducted a controversial study that involved paying dozens of young women at a hospital near Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, to get artificially inseminated so their embryos could be flushed out of their bodies and analyzed for research purposes. In addition, some women underwent surgical or chemical abortions afterward when tests indicated some of the embryos might not have been successfully removed. In other words, okay, to put it down into plain English, in other words, what happened is that these women were paid, okay, and then their eggs, right, were artificially, okay, fertilized by sperm, right? Their bodies were basically forced to release numerous eggs at once, and then all of them were fertilized, and then their bodies were forced to flush out these embryos, okay? These human beings, okay? We're going to get back to that in a moment. So these women were paid for the express purpose so that the scientists, so-called, these mad scientists, could artificially create human life for the sole purpose of doing research on them. Okay? And like we said, some of these embryos, some of these babies were then aborted when they realized, oh, these women's bodies, they didn't flush them out. Okay, kill them. Other embryos, okay, that were created were actually frozen. Okay? People were created en masse for a scientific experiment. When the scientific experiment was over, some of them were destroyed, some of them were frozen. The ones that actually were trying to cling to life and were staying inside their mother's bodies, they were aborted. Okay? Now, as Smith says, this is horrifying. This is genuinely 100% no melodrama or anything involved. Is horrifying, and it's horrifying on two fronts. In the first place, as we've been through this before, okay, when a baby is conceived, it's a baby from the very moment of conception. It's a human being and it's a person, okay? I've done 2 or 3 videos where we've gone into the science and the philosophy of why this has to be the case, okay? So in the first place, it's horrifying that doctors are creating human life in this way and then using them for their own purposes, right? For their experiments, and then freezing them if they want them, destroying them if they don't, and then aborting them if they're still in their mother's bodies. The second way that this is terrifying is because these women, they were paid for this, okay? They were paid for their eggs. That's it. They were basically paid for their fertility. You know, it's really amazing how many times, you know, in the last 4 years, have we seen these feminist protesters garbed up in these Handmaid's Tales costumes, protesting, you know, whether it's pro-life laws or Brett Kavanaugh or just Trump in general, or, you know, right-wing politics, conservatism in general. How many times have we seen that? Numerous times now. Where are they here? Honest question. Where are these protesters now? Are they outside this hospital in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico? No. No, they're not. Okay? That will tell you a lot just by itself. Okay? Now, but you might be saying, well, what's the purpose of all this? But what's the purpose? Why are these scientists even doing this? That's the answer. This, and more of this is the answer. According to Smith, Wesley Smith, okay, who was writing about this in National Review, the whole purpose of this is to help the big fertility movement, okay, the big fertility industry, where women will pay, and they will pay well. Rich women will pay, okay, for a preconceived embryo that has been put on ice. They will basically pay for that embryo. Basically, what they are going to be doing, let me just put it out here on the line, okay? This is also that rich women can pay to buy a human being and then to have that human person artificially implanted in their womb so then that they can carry that baby to term, give birth to him, and then raise him as their mother. Even though she has absolutely no connection to him. She has absolutely no biological connection to him whatsoever. That is what this is doing. This, okay, in plain, simple English, is the buying and selling of human beings. Okay? This is what a 21st century slave market looks like in the Western world. And people might be flapping their hands right now and saying, oh, geez, Nay, I mean, they're not going to be sent off to, cotton fields or anything like that. They're not going to be sent down to mines or anything. Spare me the semantics. When you pay for a human being, that is the exact same thing as antebellum plantation owners paying for an African man or an African woman fresh off the slave ship to work in his fields, to work on his plantation. I want a child, but you know what? I don't want to get married. Or, you know what? I don't know if I could actually conceive a child now because I was, working all these years, in my 20s and 30s, and I didn't get married or anything. And so I don't know if my husband and I can actually conceive one of our child now. Here, come up, right? To the platform, pays your money, and you've got the baby of your choice. We have them all alphabetized, male, female, and because we've done all this other testing, we know what color hair they're going to have, what color eyes they're going to have. Hey, maybe we even have some genetic traits that they're going to favor. Maybe this one is going to tend more towards athleticism. Maybe this one is going to be better at music. You want a mathematician? Well, we've got those over here under M. That is what is going to happen. Okay? Just to put it in plain, simple English. Okay? And this affects all of us. Again. Okay? We are this interconnected spider web of people, which is both a glorious thing and a horrifying thing, because we benefit from all the good things that happen in society, and we all suffer from the bad things that happen in society. And this is a horrible, terrible, evil, bad thing, okay? This is Frankenstein in the 21st century, like I said. And how is this going to affect all of us? It is because it is going to degrade every single human life. That is what it is going to do, okay? Remember in the old days when, when a mommy and a daddy love each other very much, right? Those days are gone, okay? The child who was supposed to be conceived and loved, heck, the child who was just supposed to be conceived from a man and woman doing what they've been doing for, 10 million years, doing the old devil's tango, keeping the species going, writing the next chapter of the human adventure, that is going to be gone, okay? And instead, it is going to be replaced with this cold business mentality. I want a child. What kind of child do you like? Well, I have some ideas. Fill out this form. Here you go. That will be, $250,000. Here's a check. Thank you very much. Here's your baby. Go into this room. We'll get you impregnated with him right away. And this is going to degrade all of our lives in two ways. In the first place, because human life now is not going to be sacred. I mean, you could argue that it has lost its sacred nature today, but this is really going to put a stake in the idea that human life is sacred. I mean, if human beings now can just be created in a laboratory to fulfill, the whims and desires of rich people, whether they're single women or whether they are, heterosexual couples, or whether they are, lesbian pairs or gay pairs or whatever the case, right? Science creating human life is going to be an assembly line, okay? No more different than a toaster oven or a car or anything like that, okay? We don't think that a car is sacred. In fact, cars are pretty common. If it breaks, yeah, it's annoying. You might not have money right now to get a new one, but new ones are always there. That's going to be the same mentality. Humans, they're just assembled. They're just created through a factory process. Okay? There's nothing sacred about that. Furthermore, it is going to implant in us this idea that human beings are only sacred and valuable if they actually fulfill some sort of a purpose. Look at these women, okay? The women here who were paid off in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, right? They were reduced to petri dishes for their eggs and their fertility. If they hadn't been fertile, if they hadn't been women, these scientists wouldn't have given, two tinker's dams for them. They wouldn't have paid them this money. They wouldn't have taken an interest in them. Absolutely not. They were only valuable because of what they could give these scientists. In the same way, these babies that are created are only going to be valuable if actually someone wants them. Okay? If someone actually comes in and says, I want that embryo, that baby who's been frozen on life for God knows how long, I want that one. Okay, that is the only time that they are going to be of any value, if you give them value. Well, the problem with that is that if people are only valuable, if they're only sacred because someone gives them value, what happens when that value is taken away? More than that, when does this process start? When you're independent, then do you have intrinsic value when you're independent and no one can take that value from you? But when are you totally independent, right? Does that mean when you're 8 years old? Does that mean when you're 18-year-old, 21 years old? Are you ever fully independent? Are you only independent if you still provide some sort of value for society? All of these questions that are being raised by this, none of which actually have good answers. But don't worry, gang. The scientists said, hey, we did nothing wrong. I mean, this passed multiple ethics board. It's fine. Because now, if an ethics board, a scientific ethics board puts its stamp of approval on something, you're good to go, Well, you know what? By that logic, everything that Dr. Mengele did passed ethical muster too. All the experiments that the Soviets did about, rejuvenation, regeneration, and xenobiology and everything like that, that passed ethical muster too. Every day, we get closer and closer to a brave new world. And one of these days, we're going to look back and think, oh, cripes, we've gone too far. And by the time that we realize that, it's going to be too late to turn around. And we will have probably already have started to be eaten by the processes that we have already set in motion. But that is story number 2.